Sorry.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to our discussion on
Censorship.
Oh, I thought we were going to get a belch. We're going to
Censor the belches.
Censor your belches.
Yeah, we need a bleep button.
I got one. Just kidding. I can't do it on command.
All right, so tonight we've got props, but we're going to discuss like censorship mainly in books or banned books. And what else, dear? Yeah, you have no idea. I don't know why I'm asking you.
I'm just here for a prop.
That's our conversation tonight. So where would you like to begin our conversation on censorship in books? Genderqueer? We might as well talk about genderqueer
because it's the most egregious like attempt to ban a book I have ever seen.
It is, honestly.
So for those of you who don't know, a legislator whose name I have forgotten on purpose, from the Hampton Roads area,
Virginia. We're in Virginia.
Hampton Roads, Virginia, went on she had a mission that she was going to get this book banned, not from libraries, but from the world. She wanted it banned at Barnes and Noble,
bookstores.
She just
everywhere.
wanted it not available to anyone ever. And I'm like, why do you hate reading so much?
Yeah. All right, so dear, talk about genderqueer really quick and what.
There's periods in it. That's so atrocious.
Well, yeah, because there's sentences. Of course, there's periods.
Yeah.
There's
Do they have those weird collars?
The bloody kind. You dudes.
So this book is actually
it's a memoir. It's a real story.
Right. So that's what I was trying to get out of you.
So what I had, a lot of the books that are banned or are challenged tend to be real stories,
right?
Like memoirs, people just telling stories about their lives, and then other people going, that offends me for reasons. And
bonus points if they're queer.
Yeah, I have noticed in all of the books that have been challenged in the last few years, the majority of them are because it features queer people.
Right, but and a lot of the conversation, even around this, is like, well, I don't want my children reading this, and it's like, well, your 6-year-old's not reading this.
Yeah,
right. Like this book does not go in your 6-year-old library, right? Like it's not going there. It's going in like high school. It's
like a coming of age story, which I've read a million of them. As a teenager, I read a million of them, and nobody cared when we were teenagers.
Right. Yeah.
But I mean, having a gay character apparently is the line that must be drawn.
So my question and stuff like that, like, I mean, really, this is just based on like someone's life, and like the period is most
part of their life.
Yeah, but I mean, that's a lot of the banning, right? Like, there's no.
I think this one is banned for.
I believe there is one.
Oral sex.
Right.
Yeah. Sure. And I don't know, but my question is National Geographic still in any libraries? Because let me tell you, when I was growing up,
yeah.
Let me tell you what I saw in the National Geographic. Like
nudity, I guess.
Well, once again,
it's not explicit,
but it's not. Yeah.
I mean, it's a little bloody.
Well, like there's just an intelligence missing in the discussion of why you would even want to ban. Like, you're trying to ban, in this instance, you're trying to ban someone's life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't give you the right to ban someone's life. Like, shouldn't even be a conversation.
Their story deserves to be told.
And
like everyone else.
And if you don't want your child, or even if you don't want your adult to read it, then don't read it. But like, you're not finding these in elementary school. But that's what they make it out to be. They make it out to be, this is in your elementary school, but it's not. It's not. That's where this is not.
The argument being made for banning books is the same argument, the bad faith argument that gets made when they want to ban literally anything. We're doing it for the children. We've got to save the children. But they clearly don't care about the children. They only care about whatever this weird culture war thing that's been going on for the last, I guess, 20 years now.
Yeah.
It has really become a thing, and it really feels like people who read versus people who don't.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be honest on this subject, because if anyone's talked to me for 5 minutes, like I detest any kind of banning, censorship, or whatever. But if you truly want to ban a book, or especially burn a book, you're really on the wrong side of history.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just going to flat out tell you. And
Every
so if
time.
you made it this far and you don't like what I just said, you can end this now, because
it's only going to get worse.
It's only going to get worse, right? Like, I don't really have, like, I'm passionate about a few things.
Yeah.
This is it.
Yeah.
Like, this is the top of my passion realm, especially reading books my entire life. Like we were forced to read books, like in high school or middle school, and I'm assuming they still are, but like it's a whole different thing now, where it's like, well, we're going to force you to read this, and then I want you to get out of it what I've gotten out of it for the last 60 years, which makes no sense to me either.
People are changing. The text needs to
But I think that's a problem, though, right? So I had great English teachers. I did.
I did too.
I love them to death. But my one complaint is if you read a book that they had a passion for, if you didn't get out of that book what they got out of that book, you got an F.
Yeah,
you were failing, right?
I had some debates with some English teachers over the years, because they were like, "This is what this book is about," and I'm like, "But I got this out of it."
Yeah,
and they were like, "No, you're wrong."
Right, and I think that's part of the problem, right? Because once again, you still have that generation that's ahead of even ours, right? And they still have that mentality that, well, I've read this book and this is but they want to ban a book they've never read, because they're not going to get, like, they've never read this book and they want to ban it because it's a memoir and it's LGBTQ. And it's like, well, we need to ban, but I think that's part of that principle.
It's outside of the binary that they consider
male and female. Because they can't get anything out of this book, right? And so
But they could if they read it. I believe they could.
They? But here's the thing. These are people, I think, that don't want to learn new things.
Right.
They want to be comfortable in their box and not have any new information challenge how they view the world.
Yeah.
And again, it comes down to people who read, especially people who read various different things. Like if we read books only featuring white dudes, we would be lesser for it. Like, reading books about different cultures, about different people, about different experiences are really, like, I remember as a kid being told, like, traveling will change your worldview.
Yeah.
And I think that was the consensus back then, because we didn't have so much literature to show us these different parts of the world. I don't think travel is really as necessary now, because we've got so many books that can take us there.
Right. And I mean, the onset of the internet has changed
a
lot of that too. Like, because before, like, you couldn't call someone overseas.
Right.
Like, there was no, your phone call
it cost $1 million to do that. Yeah.
You could do it, but like, you had to have like all this special equipment. And now we can pick up our phone, or we could just go to the internet, and like, I can talk to someone on Facebook that's in England. Right? Like, you can leave a message on someone's post who lives in England or Australia, and they may comment back. It's a whole different concept. But I know I've told you this about where my mentality, not necessarily, it didn't change, but the first English teacher that I ever had that made me feel like that everything I ever read and thought was valid was at University of Richmond. And these two have both heard this 1,000 times. So we had to read these stories, and a lot of them were short stories in a book, and we had to write papers on them at U of R. And she goes, just write your thoughts. And so I did. I wrote my thoughts on this one story, and I turned it in, and I got an A. It was the first A I'd ever gotten on the English paper in my entire life, right? And so I graduated there in 2004. So that was 20 years ago, right? So 21 years ago, I finally got an A in English class. But her statement to me was, if you would have written anything different, I probably would have failed you. Because she goes, I knew it wouldn't have been you. So she listened to my conversations in class, she asked questions, and so she got my personality and knew what I was going to get out of a book. It wasn't what she got out of the book.
Right.
but she let me get out of that book what I wanted, and so I think that was a big difference, and basically expanding my reading knowledge at that time, because it was like, well, okay, that means that everything I thought was true.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of this comes from.
I started reading early, and I read anything I could get my hands on. And I remember my mom getting mad at me because I had this giant stack of comic books. And why are you wasting your time with those comic books? And blah, blah, blah. And I was like, have you looked at what's under the stack of comic books? And it was like Shakespeare and Edgar Allan Poe and whatever else I could get my hands on. It didn't matter what it was. I was reading it. Comics were the best medium.
Yeah, mine was just comics and cereal boxes.
Back then we didn't have
bottle while you're sitting on the toilet.
Yep. Read whatever you can get your hands on. Yep.
So yeah, Genderqueer is probably, I guess it's the #1 banned book right now.
Yes.
It is the #1 censored book that's out there, and it's really just.
They were trying to keep us from even selling it.
Yeah.
Yes.
It was a wild summer, because I believe it was
a couple of summers
two years ago in the
2021
summer when
maybe?
this was all happening.
Yeah.
And we had a couple copies in stock, and then suddenly they were gone, and we went to reorder, and there were none.
Right.
For like 2 months, we couldn't get any.
And then they did the deluxe edition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will say, the fastest way to up the sales of a book, try to ban it.
Yeah. It helps a lot.
Yeah. Because I heard this years ago. If they're trying to tell you shouldn't read it, it's probably something you should.
Well, that's a good segue into this book.
Yeah.
Because
Mouse, we cannot keep in stock.
so Art Spiegelman wrote Mouse. Anybody
Long
remember
time
the
ago.
year?
It was the 70s.
Yeah, it had
was
to be.
Jinx.
I'm trying to look really quick.
It still holds
73.
the distinction of being the only work of graphic fiction to win a Pulitzer for journalism.
Right. So
Is
Art.
it fiction though?
Well, no,
No.
it's nonfiction, but the only
It's the only comic.
it's the
ever win
only
a
comic.
Pulitzer. The only graphic novel comic. It was initially in comic form in a magazine.
Yeah, I can't remember the name of the magazine now.
Yeah, I can't.
but-
It was probably anyway. But I mean, this came back around to get banned again because it is constantly getting banned because
Short Order Comics #1, 1973.
right.
Mm.
So I mean, basically, this is a true story about Art's father
Mhm.
in the Holocaust and what he went through, and that's what this whole book's about. And
I read it once, and I don't think I could read it again.
and basically, he uses mice to be
the mice are Jews, the cats are the
Germans.
the
Pigs are
nationalist
Polish.
Germans. Yeah,
Right. So, but like once again, this is constantly getting banned just for once again, it's just a story. It's drawn by animals,
Mhm.
but it is actually basically a biography of
It's a Holocaust story, so
Yeah.
there's horrific images inside.
yeah, and so this I mean for a while, this also went through what Genderqueer went through
Mhm.
during the same time where you couldn't get this book back in stock.
Yep.
Like it was just
But this one,
There's rat nudity.
the reasoning for the banning was nudity, and I'm
Right.
like, they're not even humans.
yeah, they're rats.
Not even that they're killing people.
Yeah, but I think that the desire to ban this book had nothing to do with nudity. It had to do with how a certain loud segment of the population who are usually the ones championing the banning of books, really objected to the Nazis being shown in such a bad light.
Yeah. Well, that's a lot of it, right?
It is.
I mean, they were marching on the street with Nazi flags, so it's kinda...
the crazy white nationalist movement in the country that has popped back up in the last 10 years or so.
But that's why they want this ban. Like
Yeah.
once again, it's just a story, right? It's but
It's a true story. It's someone's story.
It's someone's story. It's a true story. There's usually a theme in most of these of how the.
I mean, this is also a true story.
Yep.
They called us enemy. This is a true story that people. It's kind of the other side of the World War II.
Right.
Yeah,
but it was in America.
There's Japanese internment camps in America, and this one they want to ban because it's un-American to tell history.
Yes, It's
because they don't want to believe that we would do something so horrific again.
what?
Yeah.
But that's, and going through some of these, going back to this, right? Like this is the conversation I have a lot, and y'all brought it up. Is like the book wasn't even banned because of the violence.
Right.
It's banned because of rat nudity.
Yeah.
So
Mouse.
once again, well, what mouse? Yeah. But once again, you're upset about weaponized mouse nipples versus. So once again, the whole reasoning for censorship to something seems off to me.
Every bit of it, at least in the last 10, 15 years, is definitely because there's people who are seeing books about non-white, non-straight characters, and it is forcing them to ask questions about the world that they don't want to ask. I think almost every book that has attempted to be banned in the last 10 years is because there are people who don't want to get outside of their bubble, and they don't like it being shoved in their face. And by that, I mean people existing.
Nothing's being shoved in anyone's face.
Or well, let's take that to, like, so this is drama by Raina, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's basically one that gets banned because of
two boys kissing.
So once again, it's for them. It's
two girls kissing.
I thought it was two boys kissing.
Two boys
Anyway,
kissing.
two people kissing. I'm assuming it's either two girls or two boys because that really
sets them off.
That
Yeah,
really sets them off to want to ban a book. But the issue is once again, you can have books that are beheading people,
mm-hmm.
and everyone's fine with it.
Yeah,
like those books don't ever get touched. They don't ever get banned. But if that book, like this, if that book has two guys or two girls kissing or a nipple, we want to ban it. And I don't understand. Like, not that I would still agree, but like if you're really like, well, we really need to get this book out of the middle school because 4 people got beheaded and then 3 people got gutted.
Yeah.
Then you know what? You could have a conversation with me, but that they don't care about that book.
Right.
They don't care about that book being in school. They care that, oh, that page there has kind of a side boob and we can't do that.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, this is a perfect example.
One of the boys is wearing a dress.
Well, but once again,
my pearls.
Once again, obviously, you intellect people have never read Shakespeare. Because I hate to tell you, but all the initial Shakespeare plays were all done by men because, hey, guess what women couldn't do?
Yeah.
Women couldn't be in plays. So that's the part of this that I don't understand. Like, why do we want to forget? Why do we callously forget things so we can make it where we can ban it?
Fear.
That's the kind of conversation.
All of this is about fear of change and the unknown.
The other.
But that's my point. What's the change? Like, we've been doing it for thousands of years.
Yeah.
Right? Like, the Romans have been doing it. Mm-hmm. Shakespeare, like, all of his plays were all men. And this is not a conversation about if Shakespeare wrote his stuff or not. Don't care. Do not care.
Aliens.
There's always been rumor of where Shakespeare didn't actually write anything. I can't think of the guy's name.
I don't know.
Anyway, that's a whole nother conversation. But like, all the plays were done by men. All the men were dressed up as all the women. Like, there was
the 1400s, man.
Yeah, there was no women really.
Or whatever, I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah, I can't remember either. That was part of reading and history. I don't know. I'm not very good. I just know it happened.
Yeah.
I remember the big pieces. Well, like that. So, like, where did that get lost? Like, is it?
It's all. Every time things get lost and forgotten, it's because a ruling class decides that the true history doesn't need to happen, or doesn't need to be taught or told or remembered, and then we forget, and then everything cycles back around again. Like, that's just the way history has always been. Like, the history is written by the winners, and then they delete all of the stuff that makes them look bad. It's harder to do that now because of social media and so many people being able to film so many things. Of course, I think we're about to get into some AI related, like, what's real and what isn't.
That's a whole different.
Let's get back to the sex.
Sure.
So you pick up the lion book?
Well,
This is banned because of explicit sex.
Between lions?
Pride of Baghdad. Yes. So back to your National Geographic conversation. Animals mate.
Right.
Completely normal.
Yeah, I remember in elementary school watching nature films
Yeah.
where lions and stuff were mating or tearing apart antelopes or whatever.
Yeah,
It didn't scar me.
There's a lot of death and destruction in this book, but we're going to ban it for the explicit sex scene between two lions. The first one was rape.
Yep.
The second one, nothing was shown. So
Pride of
I
Baghdad.
don't get it. I don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, once again, it's
They're animals. Literally animals.
now, but the other thing is this is also based on a true story.
Based on a true story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Just making animals talk and be animals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they all die in the
But
end.
once again, yeah, the
spoiler
premise,
for a
how old is
20-year-old
this
book.
Yeah, jeez. But the story happened in 2003 during the war.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the book's probably 10 years old now.
All books older than that.
I think it's older than that, yeah.
Da-da-da.
But yeah, this is a story about like when was this Desert Storm?
2006.
This was when we went to war with Iraq,
Right.
and the zoo got busted open and the animals all left.
So I think we bombed the zoo.
Well, you know.
No, we killed the animals in the end. That's what we did.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Okay, that's what it was. They just
I
escaped.
just read it like
Okay.
a few hours ago.
So we didn't actually. It's been a while. I couldn't remember. I knew we did something.
We killed the animals.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But once again, yeah, it's banned because of lion sex.
Yeah.
And not even lion sex that's shown.
The first scene is kind of shown, but not like body part wise.
But this is not a book that you would find in like an elementary school or middle school library.
No, because it's a mature. Once again, it's a mature
for
book.
Mature
like
readers.
so, like you may find it in your high school.
Maybe
but
that'd have to be a pretty progressive high school, honestly.
I think it
But
should be in high school.
But it still could be in a high school. Like it's like once again, we had this conversation today. If you truly think that your 13-year-old doesn't know about sex,
especially with the internet,
that's with you. That's on you.
We did bomb them.
Okay, that's what I thought. I thought it was when we bombed over there. We hit near the zoo and we kind of busted up a whole bunch of stuff,
So
and
then they
then
had to go around and kill the animals so they didn't kill themselves.
Correct.
The people.
Kill people. Yeah. But once again, there's it's we're banning because of some type of sex that let's save the children, but there's no children to save in this instance because like there's not a high school that probably honestly there's probably not a high school that probably even carried this book. Right?
So I think one of the things that we haven't mentioned yet is that what is it? 78% of all book bannings is like one dude or one lady.
It's like it's a small group.
It's a very small
I think it's
group.
6 people.
Okay,
that is,
but all
it's
of
like
these challenges are from this one tiny little group, and I guess they hate everything.
These books are all so different.
Yeah.
Right.
There's, like I said, it's the whole banning. It doesn't. I guess for me, there's no rationale to what they're doing. Well, because they haven't read the books
clearly.
They'll go to it and they'll like this book will turn my kid gay. It's like, well, there's no way this book's going to turn your kid gay.
This book will turn your kid gay.
We just said no.
It is odd to me that the people who are like, these books are going to turn our kids gay are guns don't kill people.
Yeah, I mean,
like, if the inanimate object can't do this thing, how is an inanimate object able to do this other thing?
Right. Yeah, it's still like all it's doing is it's just showing you someone else's life.
Yeah.
Or someone else's potential life. I mean, this is also that, right?
This is based on Flamer is based on the author's experience at summer camp.
Mm-hmm.
He is a queer author, and he wrote about summer camp. And he's like, I'm not gay. He's in denial at Boy Scout camp that he's gay.
A lot of people discover themselves at camp.
I like that theme.
Yeah, me too.
Camp themes.
Yeah. And why was this one was just banned?
Probably because it's gay.
Because it's gay.
I mean,
literally.
Is that literally?
I don't remember. It was a wonderful book. I highly recommend it.
I mean, I'm sure there's two boys kissing
Probably.
I don't think so.
in here. Well, I see a pocket
There's
knife.
self-harm. Let's see. Did you make notes?
Some of
I didn't
the
make notes.
rationale for banning some of these books just doesn't. It defies logic.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Bone real quick.
Okay.
Bone. This is whenever I have a kid come in the store.
Well, hang on. This is a kid's book.
Yeah.
This is an all ages book that, trust me, all ages should read at all time.
My kids read it when they were young.
Years.
It was coming out when I was an adult. And then as soon as it got collected, I bought it, and my kids stole my copies, and I don't know what happened.
So this is Jeff Smith. So now all this comes out from Scholastic Kids.
Yeah.
At this is a cartoon books. This is when Jeff was doing his own self-publishing. But like everything of Bone now is Scholastic.
So this was banned because an adult was smoking a cigar and drinking a beer.
And
in a tavern.
You shouldn't be doing that in a kid's book.
I hope you don't do that in front of your kids, people.
So yeah, this is one of those things where I think somebody picked it up and was like, well, I don't understand this, so it must be banned. Which is 90% of the book bannings is because whoever's doing the banning doesn't understand what's happening.
Is this beer?
Yep.
How do you even know that it's beer?
Well, because Lucius runs a tavern,
right?
And they order ale and stuff. I think they order ale. I can't remember. It's been a while since I read it. But yeah, the three main characters, the Bone cousins, are all adults. Smiley Bone smokes a cigar.
Right.
And it is.
They just look different.
Yeah, they look like marshmallow people.
They're so adorable.
They are. It is one of the best fantasy action adventure comics I've ever read, and it is perfectly fine for all ages.
Yes, absolutely.
But some crazy person challenged it and wanted to ban it, which is wild because Scholastic is sort of the authority on kids' literature.
Yeah.
I mean, they do go around to schools and sell books.
Yeah, and
they do this fair thing.
They bought so Bone was black and white when it came out. Scholastic bought the rights, made it color, and instead of one giant volume, it's in nine smaller volumes. And I love that book. Whenever I have a parent come in, they're like, my kid doesn't really like to read. This is one of the first things I pull out because it's silly. Some of it's silly, some of it's scary. Kids
love scary.
They do.
So why? So especially this instance, right? And so when we say ban, there's counties, right? So it's not like a U.S. ban, not always.
Right.
I guess the closest thing to that was
genderqueer.
But like, there's a bunch of counties, bunch of schools, bunch of libraries across the U.S. that has banned Bone. Why do you think that those groups, because a lot of times they go to school boards with this, and like the one loudmouth person who wants to ban a book is what's up there in front of it, and the school board just goes with it. So why do you think these school boards listen to that one person instead of the other 30 people that doesn't care whether it's in their school or not, or wants it there? Why does the one person get the say that a book gets to be banned when they're the one spouting that parents should get to choose what their kids do, while they're choosing that your kids can't do this?
Yeah, it much like a lot of things when you talk about government, because a school board is really just like a governing body of the school.
Yeah, and most of them are elected officials.
Yeah, and like I don't understand how so often, especially in local places, one loud person gets their way, and it's because they're loud.
Right.
It's because they make a ruckus.
And they won't be quiet.
So is there just not enough people that show up? Once again, I don't know. I haven't sat in a school board.
I haven't either.
Should.
They probably would not like me to be at a school board meeting a whole lot, but I probably that may be something that I start doing, because I stay up a lot of stuff on the county here that we live in. But like, so these school boards they just listen to this one loud person, and they don't like read anything. And once again, are we back to, so most of the school board people are older.
Yeah.
Once again, and I'm 30 the rest of my life, so we're just going to go with that. So they're mostly older and stuff. And so is it the fact that do they still have the mentality of, this goes back to our EC conversation that you and I have been having, and we'll have in a whole nother show, is that do they still think that everything is only for kids? And
I think so.
Anything out the norm, like they don't believe that someone like me could be reading this.
Yeah. I think a lot of it's ignorance. Ignorance and fear are the two driving factors for just about every poor decision ever made.
Yeah.
And that you've got school board officials. I can tell you that the English teachers that I know that are regulars that I talk to, their schools do a really good job of promoting graphic novels and getting kids. They're like, we just want these kids to read.
Right.
But if you don't have that person who's already educated about the medium, I think it's really easy to steamroll a school board full of people who have no idea about the benefits and the meat of graphic novels.
Yeah, I mean, I guess
they assume comics and graphic novels are for kids because
yes.
they're pictures.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, so it was that way for a long time. It was been that way forever, right? So it's been that way.
Yeah, there's still a stigma about comics.
Because you still have, I still hear people sitting there going, "Oh, they still make comics."
Because I don't want my kids to read that. That's not reading.
Because in their head, it's always been like Archie and stuff. But once again, it goes to show that even those people, they never read Superman.
Mm-hmm.
Like even Superman in the 40s and 50s was, I mean, there was no nudity and stuff, but it was very progressive.
Well, I think that a lot of the books, especially from the Golden Age, like the 30s, 40s, 50s, were very progressive because adults weren't reading them and kids didn't understand the subtext of what was happening. And I think a lot of the people who are our age and older now who get mad at the woke comics are because when they were kids, they didn't understand subtext and they don't remember those things being in there.
Yeah, I guess.
They just, it's gone from their heads.
And it's funny that, like, when I was little and reading comics, that's all I remember.
Yeah. Well, I think like there's, you know, everybody has a different level of reading comprehension. And I think that...
but I'm from Georgia. Come on, mine can't be that high.
But you escaped. See, well, as soon as you could, you got out. That means you're smarter than the average Georgian.
It's still smarter than a 5th grader.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't... Like my hero is Spider-Man. I got the subtext.
I did too. I did too. But I think the average person, especially someone who read a few comics as a kid and hasn't thought about them in 30 years, they're not going to remember the stuff that we remember.
Yeah, I guess.
Because there is a crazy amount of people that don't read at all.
Yeah, like yeah, I know.
Like if it's not a blurb, they're not reading it, and half the time they're not reading the blurb.
They read the headline.
I have run into a few people that just don't read, and I can't comprehend.
It confounds me. I can't understand it
you don't
either.
Have reading comprehension?
Sure, I can go with that.
That's the problem. We have super reading comprehension, where other people don't read.
Yeah.
So
But like comics has always been about hope and betterment.
Right.
Like it's, well, once again, and we're kind of going through this now where you've got a group who wants to censor, and it goes along with this, it's not books, but like wants to censor Star Trek now. Because they're saying the new Star Trek is woke. I'm like,
Star Trek's always
like,
been
have you
woke.
never watched a single Star Trek ever?
Like it made all kinds of history.
Like, yeah, like it
had the first interracial kiss. It had the first black woman on screen who was not a servant of some kind.
Yes. Like, was a command.
Yeah.
Was in a position of command.
Yeah.
Like, it was like, did you... Like, my assumption is once again, they never watched it.
They remember the spaceships and they remember the battles, but they don't remember the subtext. It's one of those things. Well, it's wild because when I was a kid, Star Trek came on at 7:00 every weeknight.
Yeah.
And it was always on.
Always on. Right.
But I can tell you from conversations that I had with my parents years later, that subtext didn't sink in. It just didn't.
Yeah. But it's always been there.
I know.
Like it's always been. And that's, I mean, for me, that's why Star Trek has always fallen more in my line, like with the comics, because of the hope.
I agree.
Like I love Star Wars, but it's secondary to me for Star Trek.
Yeah.
I don't bash anything because I don't really.
We don't do that here.
I like everything, but the Star Trek always gave me hope. Where like, oh, Star Wars, I got to go through another battle.
So I have a theory about why we've seen such an escalation in aggression and with banning of books and with the attempt of basically banning humans. Like the war on queer people and on people of color, it is, I think that way of life that they remember, it was never true, but the way of life they remember from their childhood back in the 60s or 70s that never really existed, that generation is dying.
Right.
And it's like a wounded animal that's cornered and they're lashing out at anything that isn't them. And I think that 20 years from now, my hope is that 20 years from now, the conversation we're having right now will look really cute and quaint. Yeah, it'll be a thing that isn't even discussed anymore.
Yeah. I mean, like it's cool for stores. I mean, you know, you go into a store, especially an indie store, like almost every good indie store has a banned book display.
Yeah.
Right. But like honestly, my goal is to go into stores and there's never a banned book display.
No more books are banned.
Yeah. Like
yeah,
that's really where I want to take that. I want to make sure that we get this out there, and if anyone's watching this and you want to have a deeper conversation, like, you know, comment on these posts and let us know. Like I'll sit down with anyone and explain to you why a book should not ever be banned. Mm-hmm. And honestly, we had a conversation today. You want to ask your question now that Tommy's here? I'll ask it then. So her question to me, because of well, this is a censorship conversation.
Right.
So if there's a guy who wants to write a book
mm-hmm.
and all it does is spew hatred,
mm-hmm.
should he have a right to write a book and sell it?
I mean,
and my answer was, yeah. Like, you have every right to write anything that you want. And if a publisher is going to pick you up, or you want to self-publish and you can sell it, then I've got no reason to stop you. But it's the same principle as you've got no reason to stop this.
Right.
Like, it's just,
I'm not going to support that.
I'm not good. Right. I won't support it either.
I'm not going to order that from my store.
Absolutely not.
And if someone comes and tells me about it, I will probably have an opinion.
Sure. Right. Once again, I'm fine with it. Right. Like I'm fine telling you that I'm not going to read this book, just mm-hmm. like I'm fine.
But you're not going to tell someone else they can't read it.
But I'm not going to. Right. I'm not going to tell you or Tom or whoever. I'm not going to tell you not to go read the book. I'm just going to tell you it's not my thing.
This is a conversation I've had with many grandparents more than parents, really, where they're like, nobody should be allowed to read this book. I'm like, if you don't want your kids to read that book, I will fight for your right for your kids not to read that book. But if you tell me my kids can't read that book, that's when we have a problem.
Yeah. Like
you don't get to make my decisions for me.
Like I am not going to stop the guy from having a book out, and you know, we'll use this as an example. Colleen Hoover. Colleen Hoover, you're either for it or you're against it. There's no middle ground with Colleen Hoover, right? Okay. There's zero middle ground. You either despise Colleen Hoover or you love Colleen Hoover.
Okay.
It's just the way it is because of the material. It's mostly read by women. I'm sure there's some men, but
I'm not familiar.
Yeah. Well, so. I'll talk to you about it later.
Okay.
Trust me, between her and DeLuca, I hear enough. But at the end of the day, don't read it.
Yeah.
You know, and there's like I don't know what else to tell you other than don't read it, but don't.
I tried it, despised it.
But don't keep someone else from reading a book that you can control.
They're reading.
Yeah, so once again, we've seen people. I've seen people go into stores and sit there and go, and they'll be teenagers, and parents will be going, "Well, my kids never watch TV." And I'm like,
sure,
that's a choice. You know, and if you think that your kid in the year of 2023 and 2024 have never watched a TV, a kid has never watched TV by the time they're 14. Aw, you're adorable.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so the censorship doesn't really it doesn't help your child at the end of the day. The conversation helps your child.
Right.
Right? So when that's the big part of censorship, it's you're hiding something, and your kids still got to grow up at one point, right? Like they're going to leave the house unless you're going to kidnap your kid and lock them in a basement.
Which people do.
Which fine, that's a whole nother SVU show.
So I purposefully watched movies and read books with my kids that I knew would create a conversation, and they would, and we sometimes I would answer the questions because they weren't sure what questions to ask yet.
Right.
But I did that on purpose.
Yeah.
Because they feel safe asking you instead of someone else.
But
or
yeah, but isn't
knowing.
Right? But isn't that really? I mean, isn't that really where we should go in a normal conversation with people? Where we should be going with censorship is the censorship of what the conversation is to anyone, whether it's a kid or adult. It's how we do it, and then let them people decide, not let one person to decide for groups of people.
Yeah.
Like that's what we're fighting, right? That's what really this conversation is about. This conversation is about and I'll point at us. Why do you allow one or two people to have this much power? Like once again, I don't. As we mentioned, I don't go to school boards. Should I? Should I be going back to school boards and every time this is on the agenda, go there and just say you're an idiot? Like, is that where I should go? Like, is that a point of is that where the battle needs to happen?
Maybe.
Is someone like myself does that? And we always want your comments. Please leave lots of comments on this.
I think just selling the books and having them available is a plus. Yeah,
but see, once again, we also have to be careful, right? Because there is a comic book legal defense fund, right? And I bring them up. There's more, but I bring them up because I'm more into the comic industry. They still have to defend shops who sell genderqueer.
Yeah.
Because they get sued by somebody.
Yeah.
Because they're selling it, and you could sell it to my kid. My kid could see this, and it's like, why?
A shop in Florida some number of years ago got sued into oblivion and shut down by the county because they had manga that was like mature manga behind the counter,
right?
Not accessible to anyone. It was behind the counter, but because they were selling what someone in the local government deemed as pornography,
right?
Like that is crazy.
Yeah, and that's insane, right?
The thing is, these aren't kids' books. Why are you censoring adult books?
Yeah.
That aren't for kids anyway.
Like, if you want to have a conversation about what books are appropriate for a school library, that's a reasonable conversation.
Once again, I'm with you, right? And once again, there should be a conversation, right? Like if you go into a school, I'll say it. If you go into a school and you go into elementary school,
right,
and Pride of Baghdad's on the shelf, there needs to be a conversation.
Yeah, somebody has messed up.
I am not saying that book belongs.
There's a difference
These
between
are all adult books.
Yeah, there's a difference between age appropriate,
right,
and banning things because you don't like what's in it.
Because you don't, right. And but that's where we're really at, right? Like what we're talking about here is where we're seeing the banning is coming from people because they just don't like it. And they're using kids as an angle, and that's what makes the headline. But genderqueer was never found in an elementary school. It was never found in a middle school. I'm pretty sure the initial banning was in a high school.
Yeah.
And that's where they went ballistic, in a high school.
Yeah. I know. I read a lot of
14-year-olds.
I read a lot of things as a teenager. I read everything I could get my hands on, including some books that were probably not appropriate for me to read.
I don't know what you're talking about.
But I also feel like I turned out okay. I have a healthy love of literature and reading.
Right. And the weaponized nipple.
And the weaponized female nipple. Yeah, it's true.
I mean, we bring that up a lot because it's actually an easy trope for us, right? Because that's really where people get upset is when there's female nudity. It is.
It is wild.
It is. It's where people get upset.
Probably.
I think so.
Because you'll have people go into stores and they'll ask and I'm just going to pick up something. I am not saying that this is it, but they'll pick up a book and they go, "Is this okay for my 13-year-old?" And then you'd be going, "Well, it may not be because this topic is happening." And they'll go, "Oh, well, that's fine. I'm asking, is there a nipple? Or is there nudity?"
It's crazy to me. Like, people buy Deadpool comics for their like 6-year-olds.
There's a nipple.
And
A piece of a nipple.
And they're like, "Is this book appropriate for my kid?" And I was like, "Well, it's very violent." And they're like, "But is there any bad language or nudity?" And I'm like, "No."
Yeah.
And they're like, "Oh, it's fine then."
Yeah. And so that really throws me off of where the conversation of, censorship is coming from and banning is because it seems to be really odd and heavily geared toward like sexuality. Right.
Well,
and they consider sexuality to be anything, right? Like, once again, if you just show a nude body, that to me is that's automatic, like sexual.
And like the nudity in Mouse are emaciated people in a concentration camp. There's nothing sexy about it.
No.
It is horrific.
It's horrific, right?
And they're like, "Oh, the nipples, no, can't do it."
Right. And it seems to be a really odd conversation.
Well, I think that's always been an American thing. Like, we were founded by people who thought the church wasn't strict enough, so they got on a boat and came on over. Conversation
for another day.
Yeah, the whole puritanical idealism of America, but also like violence is fine because we had to come over here and kill a bunch of people so that we could build houses.
Yeah,
like it is.
What the nipple?
Yeah, because in Europe, like, daytime soaps has casual nudity because they don't care.
They don't care.
But also, like, a show like Law and Order probably isn't on at 8:00 over there because
the violence.
A thing that I used to say to my kids and to their mother was, I would rather my kids see the outside of a person's body than the inside of their body.
Yeah, absolutely.
I sort of tried to keep the horrible violence and gore out of their line of sight. But, like, if there happened to be nudity in a movie, whatever.
So what?
Yeah, it's not a big deal.
So
just watch Netflix, the European movies on Netflix.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's lots of nudity.
Yes.
Lots of nudity on the Europe. Well, they don't care.
Yeah,
like Europe doesn't care. It's not a thing for them, right?
Yep.
It's just a natural thing because it's honestly the most natural thing, right?
Right.
Clothes are unnatural.
I think that we as a society, like this last 10-year bump in the road notwithstanding, I think we as a society are moving to a more enlightened vision of the future. I don't know that we can get to the Star Trek utopia without the World War III part.
Yeah, that's the part that scares me.
Yeah, but
in case you don't know,
yeah,
we get to Star Trek utopia because there was a World War III.
Yeah, in the Star Trek universe, a third of humanity died in a nuclear war.
Yeah.
And then everybody went.
And then San Francisco was born.
Yeah, everybody went, whoa. And then spaceships.
Yeah. That's the reason why everything is in San Francisco and Star Trek. So going back to we talk about, we keep talking about the older generation, right? Which is where a lot of the censorship is coming from. I mean, once again, not picking on them. It's just where it's coming from because that's the one showing up on TV.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of that based on, so I remember watching, TV just like you when I was younger. So, and I guess, now when I was younger, I guess my parents then was in their 30s.
Yeah.
Who knew? Right?
Yeah.
But they were in their 30s and they go in their 40s. But TV was very prevalent then, right?
Yes.
And books were too, but TV was the thing. I remember my parents watching TV all the time. And I remember going over and I remember watching TV all the time. Well, the only thing on TV at the time was only white people.
Yeah.
And the white people played every part.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't matter what it was. And so when there was a person of color or anything, I hate to say it, but a lot of the old TV, especially with Westerns, women wasn't a gunslinger.
Yeah.
They were a whore.
Yep.
That's what they. I mean, that's just what it was on TV. Once again,
Yeah.
Not right or wrong. That was the TV in the 70s.
Yeah.
And so, like now that you're getting more diversified and all of that, like our generation that's what we're seeing, and it's just not what they're seeing, right? Like that's a part of like that, like what they're seeing now on TV, and then what they're reading in these books is a whole diversification of things that they're just still not used to, because from their time they grew up, born until their 30s and 40s. We're talking about people when we were little, right?
Right.
Before the diversification came, like we got in it because we were reading comics.
Right. And I
Your
think
diversity in comics were huge back in the 70s.
Well, I think that a thing to remember, a thing to remember is that the superhero genre was birthed by Jewish men who were escaping Europe or had family in Europe who were living through the Holocaust.
Right.
So you've got all these larger than life characters being created as a hopeful vision of all the horror that we're living through right now will eventually end, and we've created these beacons of light to try to help us move through all this horror. Right. And because of the way that the superhero comics were born, and because superheroes became so prevalent so fast, and that's kind of what we grew up on, was mostly superheroes.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, that's what I grew up on.
The characters tend to be more open-minded. The supporting cast tended to look not quite as white as what we were seeing on television. Right. Like we grew up loving Spider-Man. Spider-Man's our favorite character. His best friend was a black guy.
Yeah.
Like, there was a lot of diversity in comics back then.
Yeah. I mean, there wasn't a ton, but comparatively to everything else out there, there was.
And I think that because we never stopped reading comics, I do feel like the people that started reading comics as a kid and kept reading through into adulthood tend to view the world a little different, because we got to see all these different people and these different experiences in a way, because it's a visual medium. We actually got to see it. It wasn't even just like reading a novel and visualizing it in your head. You got to see it.
Right. You got to see the different colors, and the different countries,
and I really think that the people that did not read comics through that adolescent, when you're absorbing information and building the person you're going to become, people that did not read comics through that at all, I feel like they missed out, and that's a lot of the reason that the things they don't understand they need to destroy.
Right.
Because for whatever reason, I really think that comics helped us become more open-minded and have a better ability to empathize with people who are different than us.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Like, I think comics completely changed my trajectory of where I grew up.
Same.
Like 100% where I grew up is not. I mean, it's the year 2024, and
yeah, the area where I grew up hasn't really changed much as far as the way that they view the world. It's still very
narrow.
Trump flag.
Yeah,
it's
a very narrow aspect. But I mean, once again, like the banning and then the censorship of stuff just seems to be really odd, in a sense of spending that much effort into something that you nor your child ever had any intention of reading.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, because that's what we're seeing, right? Like we're still seeing with the censorship is the people that's censoring. Like we know that they don't read it.
Yeah.
And I mean, most of the time, like people want to talk about, you should have a child. Like they don't necessarily have a child.
So I think a lot of these people lack empathy, and for whatever reason get a weird little thrill out of making other people miserable. Like I read a lot of stories. There's a lot of
it
boomer
makes me
stories.
miserable because I get tired of fighting censorship. Like sometimes it just wears me out.
Yeah, I get it.
Like it's one of the things that I do is I constantly talk about books and why it's dumb to censor a book, or like burn books, or if you're Texas, you just rip libraries apart. That's a whole different level of censorship.
Yeah.
I mean, they closed down libraries in that one county in Texas and turned it into something else. It was like fine, we can't. I think it was in Texas, it was the state actually the Supreme Court in the state said, like, you can't ban that. And so the county's like, okay, well, we just won't fund the libraries and just shut it down.
It's
like
insane to me.
Like that's insane. So now you don't want to be in any educational.
I spent so much time in libraries as a kid.
We still spend a ton of time in libraries. Comparatively,
yeah.
You know, like, I mean, we don't go every week, but I mean, I use
the digital library every single day of my life.
I have a ton of books. Like,
yeah, I'm so backed up on books that I bought that I haven't gone to the library to borrow a book in a while.
But yeah, I mean, but there's still, you know, good sources of everything. But just the extent of one or two people saying that everyone's public dollar going into a library it doesn't matter because I want this book banned, so it should get banned, just seems really odd. So what's the answer? I mean, not that there's an answer here, but like where do you start in this battle on censorship? Where do you go? Where do you take it? Like from managing a store, where do you take it from managing a store perspective of how do you handle censorship? And
so I talk to a lot of English teachers, a lot of history teachers, some librarians who are regulars. We've helped outfit a couple classrooms over the years with a graphic novel library where they were all age appropriate for the grade level of the school.
I mean, it was all bone.
It was all bone. But like that's kind of my fight day to day. I talk to as many educators as I can. I whenever I hear someone disparaging reading, especially graphic novels, I jump in and give my opinion. And I feel like, for the most part, when I jump in a conversation that I'm not asked to jump in, they are at least polite and listen to what I'm saying. And I do feel like over the years I have changed a bunch of minds about graphic novels.
Okay, so in that sense, with that conversation, do you think is it intentional with the way they go in and disparage it, or is they just really don't know? They're just uneducated about the medium.
99% of the time, they are uneducated about the medium.
Okay.
They read some Archies as a kid, and that's all they remember of comics.
Right.
It was because...
Or they think it's all superheroes, honestly. Like,
so up until probably the late 80s, comics were disposable entertainment.
Right.
They were made as cheaply as possible, and they were designed for you to pick it up at the drugstore, the grocery store, roll it up, put it in your back pocket, ride your bike to your friend's house, and swap them until they fell apart, and then they're just gone. It was disposable entertainment.
Right.
Sometime in the 80s, and I feel like when DC started experimenting with the glossy paper,
gotcha.
I think that is where people went, oh, these are nice. Like I should treat these better.
Right.
And like there was a certain like small percentage of us who were taking care of them even before that, but for the most part, comics were a disposable form of entertainment.
I mean, I still had all my ROMs from the 70s, though.
But like my grandmother viewed comic books the same way she viewed National Enquirer. Once she was done reading it, it got tossed. And that's what you did with comic books. You read it,
right?
You tossed it.
Right. So the premise on that is so one, which once again it goes back to the challenge, right? So you got generations of people who never looked at it as reading material.
Correct.
They looked at it as the Sunday funnies and just moved on. Where most of the books, I mean, even then, right? Like it wasn't all superheroes, even in the 70s and 80s. It's literature. It's graphic literature. And so they never looked at it as graphic literature, which is honestly I'm going to say the uneducated is trying to censor and ban books is coming from. It's still not graphic literature to them.
Right.
It is something that they're used to reading in the Sunday newspaper on the comics section. And they're going like, well, this obviously is all made for 6-year-olds.
Yep. And
so once I've shown this nude body, like you're trying to corrupt my child.
And this is not made for 6-year-olds.
But none of these. I mean, other than
Bone, none of drama, maybe.
Not 6-year-old. This is probably middle school.
Middle school, okay.
Yeah, drama's middle school. We haven't shown Blankets by
Craig Thompson.
Craig Thompson. Yeah. Phew. I had the Craig part. I couldn't
There's
remember
nipples
Thompson.
in there.
Yeah.
Yep.
This is adult. Sandman is high school.
High school, I would say. Fun Home
is I can't read.
Oh my god, this book is so good, but it will destroy you.
So many words.
But because the character's queer, and I think they used like there's a suicide in the book, and I think that was what they used. Father. Are You My Mother is the follow-up to this. This is about her dad.
Right.
Are You My Mother is about her mother. But also, for those of you who have heard of the Bechdel test for movies and TV shows, it's named after the author of this book, Alison Bechdel, and it's basically if you can replace characters in a scene with lamps, or no, it's if two women are talking to each other, and it has nothing to do with the relationship or a man, it passes the Bechdel test. They need to have at least one conversation in a movie or a show that doesn't involve a relationship or a man.
Gotcha.
And that's the Bechdel test of if a movie is worth it.
Okay. Yeah, but I mean, like, so that's adult, right?
It is very adult.
Yeah.
I think that actually I know there are college classes that have used that.
There's a lot of literary stuff in here that went way over my head, and I read it as an adult. So
yeah. Persepolis is mature. It's not middle school. It's high school.
I haven't read.
I think this is high school, and
it's about the Iran revolution.
Revolution.
Yeah, but it is also a memoir.
It is also a memoir. This one, Summer.
That's YA.
Is YA.
Yeah.
It's young adult, so it's basically middle school.
And it's banned for the dumbest reason.
Why was that one banned?
Two girls go swimming. Like, I read it. I don't know why it would even be banned. But I mean, that's
I'm pretty sure it's banned because they go into a convenience store in the back room where they sell the porn.
Oh, that could be.
Sure.
They watch the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Oh,
yeah, it's
nope. Leatherface banned.
Banned.
Oh, they cuss.
Oh well,
well, no kid's ever done that.
But I mean, but the majority, like all of these graphic novels that we're talking about, are really all other than Bone is made for.
Yeah, they're not for kids.
They're not for kids. It's for high schoolers and older.
Yeah.
Right. Like the material is designed for that, so it's designed for your teenagers and above. And I mean, like, once again, I'm not going to argue it. Like, genderqueer, we know it's
I have been kind of on this thing for a couple of years that the comic book industry needs a national ad campaign similar to the Got Milk campaign that tricked us all into thinking milk was healthy for us.
Milk is healthy for you.
Except I've
seen them Sarah Michelle Gellar ad. Milk is very good for you.
So I would love a national ad campaign promoting comics and graphic novels, like in front of every movie, on every TV channel, in every magazine, in every newspaper, letting people know, hey, this is real literature. This isn't disposable anymore. It isn't what you think it is. It isn't the same thing as it was 50 years ago.
So is that the education part? Is the education part changing the wording, right? And I bring this up because we went to a store in Raleigh,
mm-hmm.
and their section with all this actually said graphic literature. It didn't say graphic novels. It said graphic literature, and I fell in love with it. So I did not come up with it. I can't remember what the store was called in Raleigh. They were great.
We went to several,
so I don't know. But like, is that really the education part? Is to change the conversation?
So around in the early 2000s, there was a movement to try and change it from comic books to graphic novels. Even if it was like a single issue, they wanted to change it to graphic novel because comic book sounds like it's for kids.
Right. And then somebody went back and started calling the single issue floppies, which they should be smacked upside the head.
Yeah, I agree.
But anyway, sorry, continue.
But I think, honestly, changing the wording, I think will help, because if nothing else, people will be like, wait, what? What did you say?
So in a sense, though, like at your store, one of the things that we changed was we don't have a children's section. We have an all ages section.
Right.
And so, but that's a part of that verbiage, right? Because else this would end up in the children's section, which is a misnomer.
Right.
Because if you're 6 or if you're 100, you should be reading this book.
Yeah.
And you're going to get great literature out of it. Like, right? Like that's the point. And like we were talking, like, is the change for us, does it go to graphic literature?
I think so. And I think,
like, does that begin to change the tone when you're looking at novels? Like, graphic novel was a good design, right? Because people had novels. You read novels and you just say, well, this is just a graphic novel. But I'm not sure people still understood.
Yeah.
Because I think we even had I don't know if it was you and I or us or all three of us. One of us said something one day about a graphic novel, and somebody took it as graphic.
Okay.
As in like, oh, well, why would you want to have all that nudity? I'm like, what? Like, what are you talking about? Like,
it just means there's pictures.
It means there's pictures. Like, it's a graphic. Yeah, like it's like, instead of me spending a paragraph telling you about the red lamp on the table, I'm just going to show it to you and get on with the world.
Right.
But is that where the education part of this is to explain that so much of this is actually made for mature readers? And what we mean by mature readers is not 18 plus. It means that, once again, there's people who come into the store that's 10.
Yeah.
And 11, and their reading comprehension is
way above mine.
Is way above some people. So once again, we let the parent decide, right? Like, he's probably read all this.
Now, when I if a parent comes up with a kid and they've got a book and I'm like, that book is iffy, I explain to the parent the content of the book, and then they get to decide whether or not they're going to buy it.
Absolutely.
I'm not going to tell them no, but I want them to be informed.
Right.
So I think a big part of our job is education. And that is on a lot of different levels, but really it's just informing a parent of what's in a book, or informing the masses that these aren't disposable anymore. Like, this is actual literature.
So I think we all agree that the education part of censorship and banning is a big part. And I think, and I'm going to speak for us, and so y'all then chime in.
That's what you do.
Yeah, I think the assumption is that I think we all agree that we can't educate the people who want to ban books.
They don't want to be educated.
Well, right. So the education part is getting out in front of those people who want to ban books and explain what these are, right?
Yep.
Or if someone uses that talking point, to explain to them why that talking point's not valid.
Yeah.
I mean, not attacking. You can't attack. It's not,
so,
but you gotta.
A thing that I do that annoys a lot of people is
I'm annoyed.
I have annoyed you in the past.
You mean the little crazy dude from Domino's? The little
exactly.
Red, okay,
we avoid him. But I will debate people on social media about topics I think are important.
What?
And I am never trying to change the mind of the person I am debating, because that is a losing situation every time. But the person that knows them, that doesn't really have a strong feeling about a thing one way or the other, will hopefully absorb new information and maybe change their mind about something, or maybe a thing that they never thought about. Suddenly they'll be like, okay, I see that now. I'm never trying to change the mind of the person I'm debating with.
Right.
That is, and I think that that's going to be true with this as well. If you're standing up in front of a school board meeting, you're not trying to tell the person trying to ban books why they're wrong. You're telling the rest of the people
why they shouldn't be.
Yeah. So I think
it's like standing up for bullying.
And it's important for us to stay cool and not get upset. Which I sometimes I have a problem, and somebody will say something so unbelievably.
That's never happened to me.
You should smile more.
Just, oh my God. Yeah, when people say things that are unbelievably wrong on every level.
Right.
It is sometimes hard to keep your cool. But I endeavor to be better and try every day to not get upset with people who are ignorant in some way.
Right. And I think that's where I run into a lot of things, because my mind works one way, and it's pure logic.
Mm-hmm.
My mind runs off of pure logic and common sense, right? Yeah. It always has.
Well, you're on the wrong planet.
Yeah, I know. And it's very painful. It's very painful at times. And so the reasoning and the premise of like banning and censorship, my brain has such a hard time like understanding, right? Like, if you want to have a conversation with me and you can give me, like, once again, I'm with you, right? Like, if I walk and see Pride of Baghdad and a 5-year-old's got it, I will probably be the one to walk up to the parent or whatever and say, hey,
let me explain what's in there.
Explain to you what's in this book.
Yeah.
But once again, I'm not censoring or banning this book. I'm just informing a parent. Maybe their 6-year-old is reading on.
Why'd you let me read it?
Well, I mean,
animals die.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen Doogie Howser. I know there's smart people that are reading, but once again, sometimes their comprehension isn't there. Like, they're smart, but their comprehension isn't there. But
well, I think that the problem with banning books is the same problem with every societal ill from the dawn of time is education, a lack of information. Well, maybe not the lack of information, because
we get lots of information.
Yeah, we have the entire history of humanity in the palm of our hand, and yet there are still people who believe nonsense.
Well, but I mean, but the difference there is, though, right? And once again, we'll go back to most of these books that we've kind of shown, and I'll put all the titles that we kind of talked about tonight down below. But the difference is, when you were talking about that, it's experience.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you don't get the experience of someone from the internet when you're learning about something.
Right.
When you're going through this and you're talking, where'd all my stuff go? Like, they called us enemy. Mm-hmm. This is someone's experience.
Yeah.
This is their experience in the internment camp, where on the internet, they'll talk about the camp, but this is a first-hand point of view that you don't get in that information, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's what gets lost in that information, is that you can ignore it. It's easy for people to ignore something when there's no tie to it. Once you put a tie to it, it makes it personal and emotional.
Yep.
Right?
I've seen that a lot when people who are anti-gay or anti-trans, when someone that they absolutely love, they find out, oh, that person is this thing that I don't like. Well, maybe my mindset is wrong.
Yeah.
And let me rethink what I think. And the hope is that they will reach out and ask questions and find people more knowledgeable than them. But I mean, sometimes
it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter for some people. But I have seen it firsthand. I have seen someone who was homophobic, and someone they loved came out as trans, and they were like, okay, I got to rethink everything because I love this human more than life itself. So, and they came around and completely changed their view. So
but, I mean,
it can be done.
But I mean, and that's a big part of what we're talking about, right? Because I mean, most of the banned books are either LGBTQ plus, they're either written or about person of color, right? I mean, that's really the two main ones. That's the two main ones. That takes up probably 90% of the banned books.
Yep.
Right? Like, which,
or both.
Right. Yeah. But that's what we're looking at, right? So that kind of needs to be a clue, right? It needs to be a clue when people are talking about banning, like what are you banning?
They're trying to ban being uncomfortable.
Right.
The conversations are being had that they don't want to have, and so they're like, well, if we ignore it, it'll just go away.
Yeah, but it's not. Like, it's like that ship is.
You can't erase internment camps.
Well, I mean, that's. Go read about the Roman Empire.
No, I'm good.
And then some of this is people who are like, well, if we teach this stuff, then our kids will hate America. I don't think that's true. I think giving a kid a well-rounded education about our actual history
Absolutely.
will show not just how horrible things were, but how far we've come.
Absolutely.
Like
we're not called the melting pot for nothing,
Right.
Like there's a reason. I'm going to say it here. I still think America's the greatest country here because of the melting pot.
Yeah.
Where else are you going to go to get this many different cultural people in one area? You go to Europe, you don't go to France and you see all these different cultures.
Right.
You don't go to England and see all these. You don't go to these other countries and see all these cultures. You come here, you have every culture. Just go. I mean, this is going to date this, but we're at the Olympics at this point when we're filming this.
Right.
Look at the American team.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Like, hey, look, the Americans won gold. They're all Asian descent.
Yeah. I saw that picture. Yeah.
Yeah. It's phenomenal of like they were born here. They're Americans. Their parents were probably born here, but their grandparents came over to give their kids a better life. They did. And now they're competing for us. Like, you don't see that that doesn't happen in any other country, right?
I think,
and that's what you got to get comfortable with, right?
Mm-hmm. I think the romanticized ideal of what America can be has been falsified into being like, oh, that's what we used to be.
But we were never that.
But we were never that.
Right.
But we can be.
But we can be.
I believe that we can get there as soon as people stop reveling in ignorance.
Like this. Once again, I'm going back to they called me in.
Yeah.
We had our own internment camp
in
the U.S. Yes, we did. And you know what? It was wrong.
Yeah.
But we did it.
I didn't learn about it till I read this book.
Most people didn't.
Yeah, most people had no idea.
Because once again, we just wanted to go, crap, we did that? Yeah, that's not good.
Yeah. Let's just pay him off. It didn't happen.
Yeah, but you're right. But like, I learned about it. Let's be better.
Exactly. Like, if we don't learn about the past atrocities, there's a better chance of them happening again.
Right. But it all leads back to censorship, right? Because once again, it's out. It's out now. But now there's people who we don't really want it to be out.
Yeah, we don't want our kids to know that America did bad things.
Yeah, but it's fine. We did.
We did.
Like, oh, no, this one summer I did bad things.
If we can teach real history and own up to all of the darkness in the past, I think that is the only way to really come to a new age of enlightenment where everyone can be viewed the same. The tribalism, the otherism, until we get past that, we're just going to keep spinning wheels and going in the same circles.
And at the end of the day, like, I'm not an optimist, I'm not a pessimist, I'm more of a realist. I still feel like we're going to get there, though.
I think so too.
And it may not happen in my lifetime.
Yeah.
But I do feel like we're getting there slowly to where, like, in my lifetime, I want to see no banned books.
Yeah, I would love that.
I want to see no censorship in my lifetime.
Yeah.
Like, that could still happen.
Yeah, I agree.
Like,
it could.
Like, we could get there. Like, once again, it doesn't. Like, once again, I do not want your 6-year-old reading Pride of Baghdad. No, I just don't.
But I want you to have the option as a parent to decide for yourself.
That. Absolutely. Yeah. Like, if you sit there and go, well, you don't know what I'm talking about, because my kid can, you know what? You're absolutely correct.
Yeah.
As a general rule, I don't want someone's 6-year-old reading it. Your 6-year-old may be fine.
It's National Geographic. It's fine.
It's National Very Graphic.
Yes. Yeah, it's the censorship stuff is we just got to figure out how to stop it, how to get in front of it, and not to attack. I do think, and once again, I'm saying this for my sake, I do think the tact on it is to not get emotional in the conversation.
Yeah.
Which is, for me, is very hard.
Yeah.
When we talk censorship in books. It is very hard for me. I'm just saying, well, I mean, this is one of my big things I've been fighting for years, right? Like I've been talking about this to people, and like everywhere I go, I talk about this. So it's one of the big things. And so I am very passionate about not banning books. I mean, granted, there's lots of books out there that I don't like.
Same.
Right? But I don't want them banned.
I don't have to read them.
Yeah, I just don't have to read them.
It's real easy.
Right? And I'm not even going to sit here and tell you that the stuff that I don't like or don't want to read isn't good.
Right. It's just not for me.
It's just not for me. But that doesn't mean I don't want you to read it or you to read it. Like, I want you to be able to make that choice of what you do and how it's done. And I just don't. It's how we got to get past that. So I mean, I think I think we all agree. It's just really how do we educate about this? Because, well, let's do. I mean, this is a long show, but another part of, we do know some novels end up like getting like censored or banned,
Right.
but the number is very low, right?
No.
Well, that's what I'm asking.
It's the same handful of books I see all the time. Like Huck Finn is constantly on the banned list because of words that parents don't want their kids to know that people used to use, or I guess still use. And
pretty much any trans or non-binary nonfiction you can.
So it's the same.
Yeah, I mean,
targeted.
Yeah, it's the same.
Yeah, I don't delve in that realm a whole lot.
Yeah.
I know y'all do more of the, like, if it doesn't have a picture in it, I don't really.
There's a picture on the front.
Well,
on the cover.
Well, honestly, I do own lots of novels just because of the picture on the cover, but I've never read. But it's a pretty picture. Yeah, I mean, so it's the same. I mean, it's the same type of principle. It's people of color. It's LGBTQ.
Yep.
And that type of sense.
Again, tribalism and otherism. That is.
Yeah. And we know they've never read those books.
Yeah, and like this is, if somehow we found a way to end that,
right,
pretty much every problem in society would just go away. That is the root of all of, I think, the problems in the world is I can't empathize with that person because they're different.
Right. Yeah. It's, like, this is always, like I said, this is always confounding me with the banning and censorship of books and of things. Like, once again, I'd much rather have a conversation with somebody about what's going on or even the topic.
Yeah.
Versus not.
And it is easier to change someone's mind one-on-one.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, like if they are willing to talk to you.
Well,
like sometimes that's just not
they're
the
just
case.
not going to talk.
I'd rather just hand them a book and say, "Here, read this."
But they're not gonna.
But they're not going to.
If they're people that are fighting to ban it, they're not gonna.
Right.
They're not gonna read it.
Well,
For sure.
Yep. So, I mean, once again, it's education. It's how we go about it. We need to educate people.
Everybody go run for school board right now.
Yep. Anyone who loves reading, go run for your school board or go to school board meetings and stand up and protect, what we want to do so we can try to get these off of any ban list out there. And let us know, let us know your thoughts and what you want to bring to this and any ideas you have, because, like, we need help.
Yeah.
Like, it's not just us. It's every store owner, every person who works at the store, anyone who likes reading. Like, we've got to make sure that all this stuff is open for everyone, and it's any censorship. Once again, you could have a horrible book.
Yeah.
It could say horrible things, but I mean, if you want to make it, I don't have to read it, but I will fight for your right to make it. Yeah.
Party.
Yeah, it's a party. So. All right. Well, I'm sure that we've talked enough about this. So, do you have any closing thoughts?
Good night.
Okay. Any closing thoughts for you?
No, I think that if everyone would at least attempt to become an advocate for reading, we could probably do more.
Right. Yep. I'll agree with that.
But that also means taking
spending time, right?
Yeah,
it's spending time.
It's spending time, and it's sometimes having uncomfortable conversations with people who are antagonistic towards you.
Right. And if you have kids, spend time with your kids with the books and explain to them.
Yes.
Explain to them what it is. Like, once again, if they're 6, please don't read Pride of Baghdad. It's kind of sad. But, find a book. Find something that is maybe a little tough even for you to talk about and talk about it.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, thanks. We appreciate it. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Right.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Keep talking. I got to turn this thing off. You're going to be on the end.